My family laughed at me because of a birthday card, so I cut off their power, canceled a dozen accounts, and sold the house they'd lived in rent-free for 8 years. My name is Noah, and I turned 30 last week. I wasn't expecting much for my birthday. I'd grown used to simple celebrations, maybe a slice of cake at my desk, or a movie if I wasn't too tired. Still, I hoped this year would be different. I'm not sure why. Perhaps because 30 felt like a significant milestone, as if they might finally see me as more than just the help. The invitation arrived in the family group chat 2 days prior. Mom's Sunday dinner is at 6 o'clock. Nothing spectacular. Stop by if you can. No happy birthday text. No cake emoji. Just if. You can, as if I had more important plans. And maybe I did. Still, I went. I always did. I arrived precisely on time. They lived in the same house I'd been paying the mortgage on since I was 22. After Dad lost his job and Mom's hours were cut, I'd taken side jobs, freelanced. Through college and ate ramen so they wouldn't have to. I told myself it was only temporary until they got back on their feet. That was 8 years ago. The house still looked the same, paint peeling near the porch, the garden neglected. My younger brother Caleb's beautiful new Jeep sat in the driveway. Mom always said he needed a nice car to stay motivated. I was still driving the used Honda I bought junior year. The door opened before I could knock. Caleb grinned and clapped me on the back like I'd just shown up to his party. Yo, about time. We already started eating. I walked into the dining room to find everyone halfway through their meal. My plate sat at the far end of the table, cold. Nice of you to show up, Dad mumbled, not looking up. He reached for the potatoes and passed them directly to Caleb. I sat down without a word. No one wished me a happy birthday. Not Mom, Dad, Caleb, or even Aunt Denise, who somehow always got invited despite once saying I looked gaunt and unsuccessful. I waited, hoping they were saving something for dessert, a candle, a card, anything. Instead, once the plates were cleared, Mom dug into her purse and handed me a small white envelope. Don't expect too much, she added without smiling. You still haven't earned it. I froze. I hadn't even opened the card and the words already stung. Caleb laughed from across the table. It's probably a coupon for therapy. God knows. You need it. I opened the card. It was a generic drugstore one, blue and white, with a cartoon dog wearing a party hat. Inside, someone had scrawled in black pen, Happy birthday, Family Leech. Perhaps this year you'll mature. There were no signatures, no love, Mom and Dad, just that. My hand stayed still. My chest felt hollow, like someone had vacuumed out all the air. I looked up. Mom drank her wine. Dad picked something from his teeth. Caleb smirked at his phone as if he hadn't just helped gut his older brother. Dad. Then added, without looking at me honestly, we should have cut you off. Years ago. You act like we owe you something. I didn't say anything. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I nodded slowly because in that moment, something in me shattered. Not in rage or agony, but in clarity. They didn't even know. They had no idea I'd been covering their car insurance for the last 3 years. That I'd been paying Mom's medical copays directly to the pharmacy. That I'd paid the last tax penalty so they wouldn't lose the house they were now insulting me in. They had no idea about the spreadsheet I updated weekly to track every penny. I didn't know because I never asked for credit, but perhaps that was the problem. Dinner ended with the usual sighs, and Caleb asked if I could Venmo him for tickets. He claimed to have fronted for a trip I never took. I nodded again, said I would take care of it because I didn't want to ruin my own plan by acting too soon. I got into my car and waited for 20 minutes, just watching the porch light flicker. My fingers hovered over the ignition, but my mind was elsewhere, perhaps 8 years ago. Recalling the first night I deposited money for their mortgage and convinced myself it was for love, not necessity. That night, I opened my laptop. I didn't sleep. I just started clicking passwords, logins, old files, bank websites, freeze here, deny access there. I didn't get angry. I didn't type in all caps. I moved like a surgeon. I didn't just pull the plug. I completely rewired the circuit. Mom's pharmacy account disabled. Auto payments terminated. Joint utility login revoked. Every family Amazon account, Spotify profile, Netflix profile, and Uber Eats card ever tied to me was gone. And I gave them one final gift, one last message on the family group chat. But before I pushed send, I stared at the screen for a long time, rereading what I had written. There was no yelling, no cursing, no lengthy speech about how they had failed me or broken my heart. So I realized they didn't really care if any of this happened to them. If I wanted them to feel the same way I did, shock, quiet, and a gradual sinking horror, I needed to speak their language. Money. So I kept it short. All payments made on your behalf are revoked effective immediately. You called me a leech. So I assumed I'd stop supporting you. Good luck out there. And I pressed send. No emojis, no signature, just that. I muted the chat and shut down my laptop. I didn't get up at 6:30 a.m. on Monday as I usually do. Took a day off. I slept in, made proper coffee, and went for a walk. I sat in the sun, trying to recall the last time I did anything without first checking weather. Mom's copay had been posted, or Dad's mobile bill had bounced again. I felt a void in my chest that I hadn't known was missing. It felt like breathing air that belonged to no one else. By lunchtime, I had 3 missed calls from Caleb. By 2 p.m., the group chat had switched from silent to terrified. The internet's down. Can you check if you've paid the bill? Caleb. Hey, why's the power off? Dad is ranting, and I'm literally missing business calls. Aunt Denise chimed in from Florida. This feels very petty, Noah. We've always supported you emotionally, even if we had our disagreements. I didn't respond. I read them one by one. I watched the tone change from smug confusion to mild annoyance, then terror. At 3:41 p.m., I received a call from Dad. I let it ring. He called again, this time using Mom's phone. Then again. I finally answered the 4th call, just to hear his tone. Noah, he said quietly at first. We need to talk. I didn't say anything. Your mother's been crying, he said, trying to guilt me. Still, I said nothing. I just think it's childish. To pull the rug out from under your family? I mean, fine. You don't want to be part of things. That's your choice. But we had systems in place. Can't just cancel things without warning. You're right, I finally admitted. Should have warned you. He paused. So you'll fix it? No, I replied. Should have warned you 8 years ago when I started paying for everything, when I let you insult me with your mouths while living off my back. But I didn't. And that's on me. There was a prolonged hush, and Dad said, You've always been so dramatic, smiled, and you've always been entitled. Then I hung up. No screaming, no theatrics, just a quiet click. That night, I received an email notice from the mortgage servicer. Another person has modified your account login. They tried to get in. I had already locked it, and I wasn't finished yet. The next day, I completed the paperwork to have my name removed from any joint accounts I'd ever been added to. I called every company and mailed every document. I even created a spreadsheet with all the account numbers I'd been linked to. Over the years, just to make sure I hadn't forgotten any, then I started browsing property records. Because, you see, the house wasn't in their name. It was in mine. It had always been. 8 years ago, when they were too deep in debt to qualify for a mortgage, I purchased the house in my name. I told them it was a family solution to keep a roof over their heads. I let them assume it was theirs. I let them decide the rules. I allowed them to disrespect me in a house that I legally owned. But I wasn't going to make that mistake again. 2 days later, I scheduled an appointment with a real estate attorney. Quiet, professional, with no drama. I detailed the scenario, showing the deeds, payment history, and letters. He looked at me and said, You've got every right to do this. I nodded. He leaned back in his chair and asked, Do you want to evict them or sell the house completely? That was the turning point. That's when it became less about punishment and more about freedom. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I opened my phone. I scrolled through years of family texts, images, passive-aggressive jokes, guilt trips, and reminders to help out because we're struggling. Then I went back to the birthday card. Perhaps this year you'll mature? I grinned at the attorney and said, Let's list it. The house went on the market a week later, quietly. No for sale sign on the lawn. No warning sent in the group. Conversation. It's just a discreet listing with the attorney's approved realtor. She was bright, efficient, and not the kind to inquire about personal matters when you responded. Yes, I own the house. No, they don't know that yet. We arranged the first walkthrough for Tuesday afternoon. I chose a time when I knew Mom would be at her monthly church volunteering shift and Dad would be out at one of his endless networking lunches that never led to a job. Caleb, as usual, was presumably gaming upstairs while wearing noise-canceling headphones. The realtor brought in a couple with their small child. They were polite. The wife looked around the kitchen and commented, "It has potential, doesn't it?" I could hear her tone as she imagined repainting the cabinets and pulling down the ugly half-wall. The husband inquired about the HVAC and roof. I had my answers ready. After all, I had already paid for both repairs last year, about halfway. Through the tour, I heard a door crash upstairs. Caleb thudded down the hallway in socks, unbrushed hair, and PJ pants. He looked from me to the pair, then back again. What's going on?" he asked, frowning. The small girl smiled and waved to him. The wife said, "Sorry, is this a bad time?" We didn't realize. Caleb turned to me and asked, "Dude, why are people walking through the house?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked around the living room, where I'd sat countless evenings throughout college, laptop on my knees, trying to stretch my freelancing work just enough to cover another month's expenses. Then I turned to Caleb and said, "It's not your house, Jace. It never was." The realtor stepped in swiftly, allowing the couple a quick view of the backyard while I handled the details. They nodded and walked outside. Caleb's face turned red. "Okay, what does that mean?" I raised an eyebrow. "Exactly what it sounds like. This house is under my name, legally. I've been paying the mortgage, and I've decided to sell it." He blinked once, twice, then he laughed quickly, astonished. "You're joking." "No, that's not even... You can't do that, dude. Mom and Dad live here, correct? And they've been living here rent-free while calling me a leech and handing me birthday cards with insults inside." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He appeared suddenly quite youthful. "You really didn't know?" I inquired after all this time. Caleb shook his head. "They always said they owned the house, that they let you live here sometimes out of pity." I stared at him. "You thought I was living here out of pity?" He scratched the back of his neck and glanced aside. "I mean, you never had friends over, you never brought girls around. You were always working, always stressed, because I was paying for everything so you could sit in your room and stream video games." He gulped hard, as if the math was beginning to click. We then heard the front door open. "Mom?" She walked in with a half-empty cup of iced coffee, talking on the phone. She hadn't seen the realtor or the couple in the backyard yet, only me and Caleb in the living room. "Oh, Noah, are you finally fixing the sink?" Then she observed his look. "What's wrong with you two?" I didn't respond. She took a step closer and narrowed her gaze. "What's going on?" Caleb turned to her, his voice low. "Mom, did you know? Noah owns the house." The pause that followed felt like the universe was holding its breath. Mom's face didn't twitch, not an inch. Then she carefully lowered her glass and added, "Caleb, don't be ridiculous. We let him sign the papers because his credit score was higher, but that doesn't mean he owns it." I smiled. She still didn't understand it. "The deed is in my name," I explained quietly. "I made the down payment. I've been paying the mortgage. This isn't your house." Her face twitched, not fear nor despair, but wrath. "You ungrateful little. How dare you try to throw your parents out of their own home?" she yelled. I didn't flinch. "Mom, you threw me out first. You've been throwing me out piece by piece for years. When you laughed at my job, when you called me a disappointment. In front of your friends, when you used my money and told people I was a failure." She crossed her arms. "So this is revenge? You're evicting your family on your birthday?" I laughed once, dryly. "No, this isn't revenge. This is closure." The realtor then stepped back in with the couple, smiling cordially. "We just love the layout," said the woman, "and the backyard's perfect. I think we'll put in an offer." Caleb looked at Mom. She stared at me. and I reflected about the future I should have claimed years ago. Mom didn't speak again, not right away. She simply stared at me as if I were a stranger who had broken into her living room. Caleb stood behind her, quiet now, his smug grin gone. The pair was discussing offer conditions and caveats with the realtor as if they were talking about draperies and countertops, not the implosion of the family still nominally living there. I went outside to give them room and waited at the mailbox, hands in my pockets, watching the wind ruffle the weeds in the front yard that I used to mow. A minute later, the realtor joined me. "They're ready to move forward," she remarked. "They love the place. Good offer above asking. You can waive the inspection if needed." I nodded. "Let's do it." She tilted her head slightly. "Are you sure you're okay with all this?" I gazed at her. She wasn't being inquisitive. She was just doing her job by ensuring that the seller wasn't about to withdraw for emotional reasons when family was involved.
How many people
Questioned their own actions, but I did not. "I've never been more sure of anything," I affirmed. By the time I returned inside, Mom had moved her meltdown into the kitchen, where I could hear the distinctive clinking of her wine glass being filled to the brim. Caleb had vanished, likely sulking in his room or texting someone for validation. Dad wasn't home yet, but I could already envision his reaction when he found out what had happened. Some overdramatic speech about betrayal, possibly with a false heart problem tossed in for pity. He'd always excelled at performative fury. The house was strangely silent after the purchasers left. I sat on the edge of the couch, taking it all in. Every picture on the wall that I'd paid to have framed, the TV I'd purchased after Dad, cracked the previous one during one of his outbursts, and the broken lamp in the corner from a fight Caleb provoked last Thanksgiving. All of it lay in silence, like a museum exhibit titled "Things Noah Paid For but Was Never Allowed to Touch." It was bizarre, not sad, not nostalgic, just weird. That night, I didn't return to my own residence. I stayed in the upstairs guest room, which Mom used to refer to as my pit stop when I needed to feel like a true grown-up. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, and didn't fall asleep, not due to stress, but rather for clarity. I woke at 6 o'clock. A.M? You're telling me he's selling it? You let him do this? Dad yelled downstairs. I didn't move. Let them stew. When I eventually came down, Dad was pacing the kitchen in an undershirt, phone in hand, most likely trying to call the bank, the police, or some long-forgotten cousin who might be a lawyer. Mom sat at the table, pale and quiet, as if the fight had been taken from her. She appeared older than she did the night before. "You want to explain what this is?" Dad said, flashing a printout of the listing that the realtor had emailed him following the showing. "I think the listing speaks for itself," I explained gently. He moved closer. "Shh, you can't just—" I raised my hand. "Before you say anything you can't take back, you should know that everything I've done is documented. I've got every payment, every bank transfer, every utility bill, the deed, the title, the insurance, the taxes." He opened his mouth. I cut him off, and I've already spoken with a lawyer. That silenced him. "Where are we supposed to go?" Mom eventually said, her voice soft. It was the first actual inquiry someone had asked me in years, and it didn't sound like a demand or a guilt trip. I didn't respond right away. I simply gazed at her. "You had 8 years," I remarked softly. 8 years to figure that out. 8 years of my income, my credit, my time, you could have saved, gotten jobs that lasted, treated me like a human being. She looked away. Dad slammed the mug down. "You're no better than the rest of them," he retorted, "turning your back on your family." "No," I replied, rising up. "I'm finally turning toward myself." Caleb crept down the stairs behind him, appearing uncertain. "Wait, are you actually serious? Like, for real?" "Yes. But I live here. Not for long." He blinked like a child being told that Santa wasn't real. "I have nowhere else to go, man." I shrugged.
Neither did I.
When I was sleeping on couches, trying to keep the lights on in this house. But I figured it out. I went over to the counter and collected the envelope with the buyer's preliminary offer. 30 days, I answered. That's how long the closing process takes. After that, I suggest you find your own way, like I did. With that, I left. Not forever yet, but for now, that was sufficient. I had one final move to make, and it wasn't about selling the house. It was something larger. The offer closed. Exactly 31 days later, I signed the final paperwork at the attorney's office with a quiet, unwavering assurance I never had before, especially among my family. The realtor pushed the check across the table, and I didn't even really notice it. It wasn't simply a payment. It was proof. Proof that I could build something, own something, and complete something without having someone else's name slapped on top of it like a participation ribbon. I didn't return to the house that day. I didn't help them pack. I didn't check in to make sure everything was okay. I'd given them nearly a decade of those things, and all I got back was snark, silence, and debt. But I did leave one thing behind, a folder, printed, not digital. I knew Dad wouldn't open an email unless it was marked urgent and read. The folder contained a document titled, "Things You Claimed I Never Did." It contained a spreadsheet detailing every dollar I'd paid on their behalf, including mortgage statements, grocery bills, health insurance payments, and credit card payoffs I'd made without their knowledge, simply to keep their accounts open. Every Uber ride I paid for during Mom's operation. Every textbook I'd purchased for Caleb that he never opened. Every time I covered an overdraft fee so their lights wouldn't be turned off. There was even a screenshot of the birthday card I received, captioned, "My thank you." I left it on the kitchen countertop. That was the last time I saw them. Within a week of the sale, the calls resumed. First Mom's tears, then Caleb's bargaining, then Dad's angry voicemails about family betrayal and disgrace. I didn't pick up. I didn't respond. Instead, I relocated. I quietly left the city, changed my phone number, and opened an account with a new bank. New apartment. Modern, quiet, and bright. Paid in full. No roommates. It had no housemates to raise anyway. For the first time in my adult life, I was debt-free. No secret bills to cover. No emergencies that required my pocketbook but never threatened my safety. I didn't know how light my chest felt until the second week went by with no calls begging for anything. I started going to therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind where you journal in a notebook that your mother accidentally reads. I started eating healthier, sleeping better. I enrolled in a pottery class on a whim, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had time for due to extra shifts and family emergencies. 6 months after the transaction, I received a letter. No return address, just a wrinkled envelope forwarded to my previous billing address. It came from Caleb. The letter began, "I still think you went too far, but I also get it now," explained. That he was living in a shared apartment across town, working part-time, cooking his own meals, and paying rent for the first time in his life. He said it sucked. He also stated that it was the first time he had realized what I must have been through, that it was something he had not known. They had told him I enjoyed taking care of things, that I needed to feel productive. Ended. The letter with, "I don't expect you to forgive us, but I hope someday you'll talk to me again, even if it's just to tell me I was a fool." I folded the letter and stored it in a drawer, not prepared to answer. Not yet, but maybe someday. Mom and Dad never wrote. I doubt they ever will. And that is fine, because I am no longer angry. I am not bitter. I am free. They used to nickname me the family leech, but I was their lifeline. I finally let go. I don't walk on eggshells anymore. I walk on solid ground. One chose myself in a place where no one deems me a failure for not buying groceries I never ate. I am at peace. I have space. On my 31st birthday, I bought myself a nice card. It stated, "Congratulations, you made it out." I signed it using my real name. That was sufficient.